We're talking with Andrew Stimmel, the head coach at Marquette University. And first of all, thank you for coming aboard. My first question is a little bit unique. You've had two experiences that I think are very different than most coaches would get an opportunity. You're part of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and you also worked with Nick Myers on the U19 national team for USL. And maybe talk a little bit about what it's like to pull a hat on for your country. And I've had that chance to ask that guy who've played for. You were a young age when you were that coach. Was that a different experience than maybe what you're used to at the collegiate level?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously with U.S. Lacrosse with the U19 team, we're kind of continuing to navigate the pandemic. So I think as unique of an experience as it would have been to start, it's been incredibly unique because of COVID and us just trying to figure out how we keep this team together. How we get an opportunity to compete, and we owe a debt of gratitude to all the people at World Lacrosse and U.S. Lacrosse, I think, for continuing to move basically mountains to make this competition happen. Hopefully next summer, that's the goal in 2022. But the experience as a whole has been just incredible. I mean, I think like you hit the nail on the head. I think initially being able to kind of put on the USA, red, white, and blue and kind of wear that on your chest is unique. And I think any of us growing up, you see Olympics and, you see those people representing our country, at the highest level in sport. And I think that's something that everybody probably has a dream of doing, in any sport they're able to do. And, fortunately enough for me, getting to coach is just, what an honor, and I think to share the sideline with Coach Myers and, his brother, Pat, everybody else that has kind of gone through this process, including, the senior team, obviously just the number of coaches that have coached on that team, guys that are legends, and legends in this game. So I think to be able to kind of step into that and, really do my best, I think to fill those shoes the best I can as an assistant is just an honor and been an incredible experience.
I would think pulling on that jersey or that USA hat for the first time, sort of the hairs on the back of your neck, it's got to be different. It just has to be different. There's no way it can compare with anything.
Yeah. And I think, especially, for me, I think a kid, growing up in Pittsburgh and a non-hotbed area, I think throughout kind of my career, coaching the places I've coached and sharing sidelines with Andy Shea and Joe Amplo and being able to share a sideline now with Coach Myers and, being the head coach at Marquette. I mean, I got to pinch myself every day. This is certainly not something that I ever dreamed, would happen. I certainly had dreams of coaching, but, once you actually kind of accomplish those things, I mean, it's an absolute blessing. So, certainly something I'm fortunate for every day.
Talk briefly about the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And I say that because we've got a couple of coaches here who are very involved nationally. Mike Jolly from De La Salle was involved with them for years. And I'm not sure if people really know what that program is. So maybe just talk briefly about that.
Yeah, I mean, FCA has had an incredible impact on my life. I started playing kind of for the national team in high school. It was a game changer for me, and I think growing up, we all grow up. Some people grow up going to church, some not, and I was someone who did, but I never really had a grasp, or really took ownership of it. It was just kind of something we did on Sundays, to be completely honest with you. And the whole reason I went and played for FCA was more for the lacrosse opportunity. It had nothing to do with understanding, reading the Bible or going to church or anything like that. It was purely for, hey, this is a great opportunity for me to potentially get recruited, and accomplish my dream of becoming a Division I lacrosse player. And little did I know going into that, 2-week span, it completely changed the trajectory of my life. It really did. And I think that's the powerful piece that FCA has is, it's certainly come as you are. You don't have to have a specific background. It's centered on, faith, certainly, but, it doesn't matter where you're coming from, whether you feel like you're a believer or not. As long as you're open, I think, to having some of those conversations, I think that's what's made FCA so successful, and I think has impacted so many people. And I think, realistically for me, it's completely changed how I coach. It's changed, I think, how I develop relationships with my players and those around me, completely, as I said, changed my life, for the better. So incredibly thankful for that opportunity as well.
Pragmatism into spirituality, which is kind of an interesting road, but how so has it changed you as a coach?
I just think it's, and as we're all seeing right now with COVID, it puts things in perspective. I think we all want to win, players, coaches alike. We want to win every game. Nobody wants to lose. But I think when you can put winning and competition, I think, in the rightful place and understand that there's so much more to this process of being an athlete at any level, not just winning, not just losing, but all of the lessons that you learn. I really think it shapes your perspective for life, and really sets you up with success moving forward. That at the end of the day, like when we die and I'm in the ground, right? Like what's really going to matter? Are the wins and losses going to matter, or are the relationships and the way that I've impacted people? Is that what's going to stand the test of time? And that's certainly what I believe, and I believe that's part of being a great coach. You can impact so many people over your lifetime, and what an opportunity we have as coaches to do that at any level.
Being in Marquette, and then obviously being in Milwaukee, when you're talking about that, I think of an old Vince Lombardi quote, which was, winning is everything. But interestingly enough, if you follow through and read the Sports Illustrated quote, you find out that there's 2 more paragraphs after that cherry pick. And part of that was winning isn't everything, but it's important as far as progress. And his whole point was it was the journey. But it gets lost in this myopic understanding, because the Green Bay Packers actually used to play in County Stadium in Milwaukee in the day. I used to go to games there because I have family in Wauwatosa. So sometimes we get, you cherry pick those thoughts, but if winning and losing is the only thing you have going, even going into the process, you're, I think, a little short and a little stunted to some extent. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. That's a great point.
Welcome back to another edition of the Michigan Lacrosse Review. We're talking to Andrew Stimmel, who is the head coach at Marquette University in Milwaukee. And first of all, thank you for coming aboard. I should mention my name is Greg Norman, the host. I guess I want to start, the easiest place is to start all the way back in Pittsburgh. You played at, I think, Franklin Regional, not mistaken?
Yep, that's correct.
And talk about, that sort of that first time stick. As you pointed out earlier in this show, that it wasn't a hotbed, but the programs and the teams and some of the groups that you guys played. You played a lot of the Midwest teams here. You played Swickley and Shadyside and a lot of the Columbus teams. So how did lacrosse become part of your landscape?
Honestly, it was through, I got to give my older sister credit. The first kind of time I really, got some firsthand experience with it was my sister, who's 4 years older than me. I think it was in 4th or 5th grade. She started playing when I was in 4th or 5th grade. And, I saw the sport and was like, wow, this is, really interesting. And then within that year, a couple of my good friends had, started to pick up sticks as well. And I started to go and watch some high school games. And, really within a couple of months, as most people understand, right, you get bit with the bug and, you just pick up a stick and I just fell in love. I was playing football, basketball, soccer, and I just felt like it combined a ton of those sports. And picking up a stick for the first time, just realized very quickly that I had some potential, and more importantly, that this was just an incredibly fun game.
Yeah. What did you play? You were a midfielder in high school, am I correct?
Midfielder, yep.
Do you have any idea in high school that you thought you could play in college?
I think it was something, maybe 8th, 9th grade, after playing for a couple of years. I had some people kind of share with me that I was pretty good. And, it was just something that, being from a non-hotbed area, I really didn't know where I stood. I knew I was pretty good for my, my town team and maybe in my region, but I knew there was people out there that were better than me and were playing at, this high level lacrosse in other areas. And it wasn't until I kind of started playing, in the club scene, which was really in its infancy in the early 2000s, you kind of played and represented almost like Western Pennsylvania, right? It wasn't like a particular club team, and we played like Michigan and we played Ohio, and we played Philly, and that was kind of the first time that I saw outside competition from the Pittsburgh area, and you realize that there were a lot of other really good players out there, and so that was really motivating for me, and honestly, just a few people in my life that said, hey, if you really work hard at this and continue to develop, you have a chance to not only play at the next level, but you might have a chance to go to Division I. And I really held on to that. That was something that was a dream for me. And any sport that I was playing, I wanted to play in college. And lacrosse happened to be that vehicle. And as I fell more and more in love with it and got better, those kind of dreams became a reality.
Did you play like all Philly guys or all Pittsburgh guys that I know, which is sort of hard nosed and had that edge?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the only way, I think, when I started playing the game that I knew how to play. I can remember my first couple games, I didn't really know all the rules, but growing up in a big football town like Pittsburgh is, you learn how to hit people really early, and you learn how to, I think, work hard and I think make those little plays. And so, without really knowing much, that's just kind of how I played. I played a physical brand of lacrosse, and got a couple penalties early on in fifth and sixth grade, and kind of learned, I think the hard way, sitting in the box for a few minutes. And I think that's translated, the whole way up through the rest of my career into high school and even in college. I just always wanted to bring a level of, I think, toughness and grit, and I think willingness to do the dirty work that maybe other people weren't willing to do.
A longtime friend, Gary Neff, was the women's coach at University of Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh, when we would play them, the young ladies from Pittsburgh always played differently than anybody we played in what was then and is now the WCLL, which is the Midwest League.
Right.
And we try to adopt some of those standards, but part of that standard is growing up that way. You can't give somebody grit if they have finesse. That doesn't mean you can't have both. But I always admired the teams when we would come down and play Swickley or Shady Side or some of the teams. You guys were always, we thought we were tough, and then we played Pittsburgh guys, and it was just, you had to strap it on and away you go. So you play obviously at Franklin, and somewhere along the line you decide that Ohio State is one of the places you wanted to go play, which is what you did. So you went and played for Nick Myers. How'd you get on his radar?
So just, Coach Myers actually played for Coach Bresci initially, before he ended up taking the North Carolina job. And I think just being kind of a Midwest guy in Pittsburgh was something that, I was on their radar, I guess, from playing. And honestly, I went to actually was recruited to Penn State initially. So freshman year, went to Penn State. This is, when Glenn Thiel was there, and I think had a relatively good experience, but just kind of wanted something more and a little bit different. And back in those days too, it was very different than recruiting is now. I didn't have a ton of people in my corner, advocating or kind of helping me look at things in a different way. I just kind of felt like, hey, I'm from Pittsburgh, I should go to Penn State. And obviously what Coach, Tambroni has done with the program now and that campus. I mean, I can't say enough good things, but it just was about a fit, and ended up transferring sophomore year to Ohio State when Coach Bresci was in his last year, and really just felt like for me that it was another kind of life-changing decision. I was very comfortable at Penn State. I loved the team. I loved the campus. My future wife, I was dating my future wife there, so I was leaving a lot behind, but I just kind of felt like, hey, I feel like there's a better fit out there for me. And, took a chance going to Ohio State, but it really did just feel like that home spot that I was looking for. And, lo and behold, later that year, we end up having the best season at that time in Ohio State history and making it to the quarterfinals. So it was just kind of a, whirlwind of a year for me, but a confirmation that I'd made the right decision. And then, in terms of how my relationship with Coach Bresci and Coach Myers, I think turned out into the future, even more affirmation that I made the right call. And those guys have had a tremendous impact on my life.
Does guys from Pittsburgh get hassled at Penn State being the other side of the state? I'm just curious. I've never asked that question before, but I think of the regionalism between Spartans and Wolverines here. And I've been a Spartan since 1966. So I asked that question with great resolve, because you become a Nittany Lion and then turn around and become a Buckeye, which is probably even farther from that stretch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's always a friendly Pittsburgh and Philly rivalry wherever we go. We have that on our team. Myself and our associate head coach at Marquette, Pete Poyon, are both Pittsburgh guys, and we have plenty of Philly on our team. Coach Richard, our defensive coordinator, is from Philly, so I think there's always a healthy rivalry, and of course, that decision to go to Ohio State, us playing Penn State on a yearly basis too. I mean, those games were very competitive. There was a lot of there's a lot of talking between the lines, and those guys are great guys though. It's all healthy competition. So those were a couple fun games though the next few years after I did transfer to Ohio State.
In the day, you guys used to play at the soccer stadium at oh my God, Jesse Owens used to play at that facility. Yep. You played in the shoe. Explain what it's like to play in the shoe. And I had a chance a few times standing on the floor. It's a most unique situation because most stadiums, if you stand at Michigan, it's built into the ground. You stand inside the shoe. It's a rather unique, imposing facility the way it was built, especially the flagpole. And just briefly explain on what it's like walking out of that tunnel the first time as a Buckeye.
I mean, it's a dream. I think for all of us, especially those of us who love the game of football, you watch a NFL game or you watch a college football game and there's 100,000 people in the stadium, and you look up and you get the feel for that game and that pregame and the entire time you're down there, like what it feels like, I think, to play on that level. And that's just such a rare experience, right? Like you've been on the field at Michigan, and it's just a rare thing for people to get to do. And I think the unique thing about Ohio State was my sophomore year, that first year I transferred, we had this concept of playing before the spring game, and now you add that element into the mix where the spring game is coming up after Lacrosse is playing Denver, who was very good at the time. And by halftime, I mean, we come out and there's, 40, 50,000 people, filtering into the stands, watching a second half of Lacrosse, and what an opportunity to grow the game. But I'll never forget those games, in Ohio Stadium. We had some incredible matchups, but, to be able to look up and see that many people taking in this sport that we all love, and knowing that, maybe not tomorrow, but in the future, there are going to be that many people at games, hopefully consistently, not just the Final Four and championship weekend. What an opportunity and what an experience that was.
I think the shoe, having built at ground level up, makes it more intimidating. I had a chance to play there as a football player in the 70s when Woody was still coaching. But I also think that Ohio State, maybe without exception, maybe Notre Dame is part of this discussion, but I don't think anybody has provided better athletic facilities in the country than OSU. They are so far ahead of the rest of this. We talk about this war on athletic war of providing all of the extras for our student athletes. Ohio State's been doing that for 40 years. I don't think that's new. And they're just always been ahead of the curve. And I think that's something that keeps them out in front of a lot of other schools.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've definitely established across the board, a standard for how they want to operate, not just with football or basketball, but with all of their sports, and they want to provide an excellent student athlete experience to every single kid that dons the scarlet and gray. And, that's a fairly unique thing. And I think, for me being at Marquette, I think that was what was so attractive, about Marquette is on a smaller scale, I believe they do the same thing. I believe they provide up there with the best student athlete experience in the country. And, it doesn't matter if you're basketball or not. They want everybody just to have an incredible experience. And that's from the top down, not only, at the athletic director level, but our president and our entire administration is just very passionate about providing that. And that's unique. That's not happening at every place.
No, and you may have one of the most unique at Marquette. You may have one of the most unique lacrosse facilities right there on the river and right next to the casino. And I say that because WCLL, which for our women's, we go from West Virginia to St. Louis and then Minnesota all the way down to Kentucky. We would gather our Division I teams, Marquette, Minnesota, us, and Wisconsin, and Michigan, and would go and play. That was the first time having family there. I brought some family down because they had never seen me coach. And I was just amazed at how great the facilities are down by the river. And that's just, you can look up into the city, you can see the train tracks going by. it's a pretty cool place, and it's got to be a plus from a recruiting standpoint, because I don't think there's anything quite like it. Maybe with the exception of Northwestern's women's field right on the lake.
Right.
It certainly is not typical of any facility.
Yeah, no, it's very unique, and I think they've done a great job, especially in Milwaukee. And you sound like you're familiar, obviously, with Milwaukee. I think that's one of the coolest things as a campus that Marquette has done is you certainly have those city conveniences of being very close to the lake, very close to kind of all of what Milwaukee has to offer, but at the same time, especially in the academic quad and down at Valley Fields, you have this kind of insulated feeling of like, you don't feel like you're in a city, for a second, when you're playing at the Valley, depending on which direction you're facing. And then you can kind of pivot, and see the Milwaukee skyline. I mean, it's definitely unique for sure. And they've done a great job, at certainly blessing, I think, our programs with those facilities. And, they're always trying to get better too. I think that's the best thing about Marquette is they want to continue to compete, and they want to provide the best experience for every student athlete that calls this place home.
Something just popped in my head. There's a school without a major Division I school, basketball, lacrosse, that doesn't have a football program. Do you think they have? I think they try harder to provide those opportunities? And I say that because football is the kingpin in terms of dollars and fans and the rest of it. Is it like the little engine that could, or do you think they just take what they have and work through it? Because if I'm an athletic director without a football team, maybe I got to work harder to figure out, how to get a little more attention.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak exactly to that, but I think they look at it certainly as a benefit, and I think it's a benefit that, and within the Big East, right, we're a unique school, in the country landscape, that I think Marquette's a big brand, but there is no football. It is a basketball school, certainly. And, I think when you can go down to the Fiserv Forum and play in the arena that the Milwaukee Bucks play in, and it's, brand new and can fit 18,000 people in there, I think you get that feel, especially in I think a sports crazy town like Milwaukee, of big time college athletics. And so I think that carries over to everything that they're doing, whether it's soccer, whether it's lacrosse, Marquette wants to compete at the highest level, and I think provide that type of atmosphere for all of their sports. And, for us as a lacrosse team and having as many guys as we do, I think we definitely benefit, from not having football, in some ways, and being able to carry the roster we have, and being able to be an outdoor field sport, that I think has that physicality and the entertainment that lacrosse provides. I mean, that's certainly unique for us, and I think unique for our guys.
The greatest outdoor music festival is literally 500 yards. The gates to the greatest musical festival in the summertime is 500 yards from your home field. All you got to do is walk over the bridge and, out to the lake, and it's what's the name of the festival? I forget the name. Summerfest. And it's got, I think it's 30 days of the best rock country stars in the world. So it certainly is but let's also not forget, I want to get back to Ohio State, but the other thing I want to mention about Marquette is that it's also, if the average salary for a professional lacrosse player is just slightly less than a first-year high school teacher, generally speaking, without endorsements, Marquette's also very much like, we just had a chance to interview Chris Cullen, and UAD, very much like Marquette, the academic standing at Marquette is every bit as good as Notre Dame, every bit as good as you were at Yale. I'm not saying it's an Ivy League school, but let's put in perspective that Marquette isn't Washtenaw Community College. You know what I'm saying? It's also, I know from my own experience, it's a great educational experience at Marquette.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible opportunity for our guys. And again, I think coming from Yale, that was what I was looking for. I think in a head coaching opportunity, that was a place that certainly wanted to be great at lacrosse, and was very passionate about the program, and passionate about providing the support necessary to compete, that we're seeing at the on the national level, right? A lot of universities are providing incredible resources to the lacrosse programs because they want to compete at the highest level, and Marquette is certainly that. And on top of that, it's also just the academic standing, right? And the academic opportunity that we feel our guys get throughout the course of their 4 years here, but also the degree that they're provided with and the opportunities that that degree will provide them moving forward in life. And at the end of the day, we all love lacrosse, and this 4 years is incredibly important. We want to win, but that degree is what's going to take care of them for the next 40 years,
Yeah.
not necessarily just this 4 years. And so, Marquette has incredible opportunities, I think, across the board. Definitely for a school that's a little bit more, medium sized, the opportunities that you have in the classroom here are incredible, and I think people, until they really look into Marquette, don't understand how many opportunities there are and how good, our business program is, how good our engineering program is. Our PT program, if you want to, kind of get into that side of things, whether it's in physical therapy, or something in sports performance, is, I think, one of the best in the country. And, all the while, I think the unique piece about it is the people that work here, that are professors, administrators, just everybody and anybody, I think, has a certain unique authenticity to them. They really care, and they really care about the students. They really care about the kids. Smaller classrooms, I think, are incredibly beneficial for those relationships where, even a lot of our alums still stay in touch with some of their professors or some of the people here that made this place great, so those are all the things that I think Marquette has certainly going for it. And, what an incredible blessing it is to be the head coach here.
How many students at Marquette?
I think right now it's about, counting grad students, it's about 12,000.
Yeah.
So it's still a nice size school, but not so big that
Right.
you can kind of feel like you're, lost in the shuffle a little bit in a huge lecture hall. So we definitely have that benefit for us.
It's not the 59,000 at Michigan State. No, I get that. I'm trying to get some perspective. When you think of Notre Dame as having like 6,000 kids, it kind of puts in perspective the importance, not the importance necessarily, but certainly the focus of what, kind of goes back. I want to kind of back the timeline train up a little bit. We're talking about when you were, and I guess I'm asking this in hindsight, Joe Bresci was your first year coach at Ohio State. Then he leaves to go home to North Carolina. And then part of it was through tragedy. He lost his son and going through all those things. But then you end up with Nick. And was, at the time, did you have any sense that Nick would turn out to be who he was? And
100%. 100%. 100%. I think, that's the, I think the unique thing about Coach Myers is, I think from the second he stepped into that role, and maybe this is, me being a little bit young and naive and not understanding. I mean, he was a young head coach. I think he was like 28 or 29 at the time. But we never looked at him that way. I mean, we knew that he was kind of battle tested, and I think certainly trusted, his judgment and I think his vision for the program moving forward. I think there were probably people who maybe felt differently outside of the program that, hey, is there somebody else that should be taking this over that has more experience as a head coach? And, I believed in Coach Myers every step of the way and knew it was going to, I think, take some time to get the program to where he wants it to be, which is winning a national championship. And, I think you've seen that over the years, him get to that level, get to the national championship game, where I think a lot of people maybe didn't think that was possible, for a Midwest school to do that, and I think Denver has helped that along, with their success. But seeing what Ohio State has done, I think you look around the Midwest, and certainly Notre Dame has had that success. We look at those programs at Marquette and say, hey, that's what we want to do. That's what we want to be. And we think that's absolutely possible for us. And people may think we're crazy. People may think I'm crazy for saying that, but that's certainly the vision that we have. So, someone like Coach Myers being someone that's coached me and is a mentor of mine, I think you see that play out in how he lives his life on a daily basis. That's not an accident by any means.
He is he misses very few rocks being overturned. He is as detailed of a guy that I've ever met. Did you learn any of that from him?
Oh, absolutely. And I think you learn that playing under Coach Myers. You learn how to scout. I think you learn the details that go into, being successful against an opponent. And you start to realize that's just every day. That's normal. That's how we practice. That's how we prepare. It's how you eat. That's how you sleep. It's how you lift weights in the weight room. I think all of those things have a detailed element to him that over the years, he's kind of put his fingerprints on and has made Ohio State into what it is today. And, so for me, my benefit to that was, being able to play under him for those number of years, now being able to coach with him. I mean, there's something every time we're together, we have a phone call or, at something for Team USA. I mean, I'm constantly writing notes and picking things up that I feel like are very applicable to what we're doing at Marquette. So he's absolutely a guy, as you said, that is as detail oriented as they come, and it's just in his DNA for sure. For everybody that knows him, everyone knows that. But he is as passionate as they come about Ohio State and about what he does. And he loves it. He loves it. He I'm sure has no issues waking up and getting out of bed in the morning to go and be the head coach at Ohio State University.
His first summer, 2008, when he took the job, Bill Wilford, a Columbus legend who was fortunate enough to, I know Bill pretty well. And we used to sit at the varsity club and Nick would talk. And he'd only been the head coach maybe 3 months. And there was no wavering. He knew exactly where he wanted to go, what he wanted to do. And it was kind of fun to watch. You had some success. You were the defensive player of the year at Ohio State. Now, your background and your degree from Ohio State is in something with operational logistics.
Yeah, marketing and logistics from the Fisher School of Business. So, what an incredible experience that was. I think that absolutely, even though I'm a lacrosse coach now, that education, I think that environment, you kind of know, and you find out very quickly if you're fortunate enough to get into Fisher and get into the School of Business. It's incredibly competitive, and you're showing up to class, whether it's accounting, whether it's econ, and you're absolutely competing. And I think the professors and everybody that's associated with the business school, they lay that out. They understand that they're at Ohio State. And, so is I think as much as, there were some long nights for me studying, I wasn't the best guy in accounting. That's a weed out course in the business school. And it took everything in me to get through that, to keep moving forward. But that had an incredible impact, I think, on even how I study today. I picked up a lot of things, on the academic side of the house, so to speak, in my Ohio State experience that I directly apply to coaching. And, I think a lot of people, when I got out and went into coaching, my parents included, they were kind of like, what are you doing? You're going to be a coach. You just got this degree. You have these opportunities. Like, why are you going to coach? And it just was something that was, on my heart and certainly unpopular. And not that there wasn't support, but you have people question you, like, can you make a living being a lacrosse coach? And at the time I was like, hey, I don't really know, but I love this and I want to see where it goes, and if I fail at it, I fail and I'll go and get a desk job somewhere and my degree will still be there. But if I don't, I think that was something that I never wanted to have, that question of regret. I don't want to regret not taking this chance. And, I'm forever thankful for so many people that were in my corner to say, hey, we'll support you, so.
It has to be a generational thing. I grew up as wanting to write and be a sports writer. And I spent 35 years at the New York Times, and writing was a hobby. Dad wanted me to get a full-time job. And then when my byline's on the front page of the New York Times from covering the Winter Olympics in Lake Placid in 1980, and he's in Florida, it sort of kind of hit him that maybe I made, a reasonably decent choice. Right. So I think they want the best, but I think part of that process is that, you imagine telling, the class clown that he can't be a comedian. He turns out to be Jerry Seinfeld or Richard Pryor. How do you harness those kinds of, because they're not typical. And I think so. It goes back to my question. You took a grad assistant job first, but you're coming out of Ohio State. So was coaching the branch and the road is that the direction you were going to follow? Was that the important thing to you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, growing up, I always loved sports. I loved kind of, teaching, and I loved working with people. So I knew that, but I just, I think once I got into school and I was putting so much time into my degree, I kind of just, was on autopilot a little bit and was like, I'm not really sure, but I want to go into business. And so that was just kind of in my mind what I wanted to do. And, I'll never forget the conversation I had with Nick in that summer after I graduated between 2010 and 2011. I still had some school left. And I called him and I just said, hey, coach, like, I don't know what you're doing for a volunteer, but I know I'm going to be on campus, and I just have this feeling like in my heart that I can't just step away. I want to maintain kind of my schedule, waking up early, getting things done. And I didn't necessarily do it because I was convinced 100% that I was going to be a lacrosse coach as a career, but I just felt like I wanted to be around the program and help any way I could. There was certainly, I think, some intention there. And I felt like internally, hey, if I do this, for a semester or two and I love it, then I'll take that path. And, lo and behold, it took me about a week, and I realized that this is what I want to do, and I think I was probably, I don't want to say maybe in the way, but, I was banging down Coach Meyer's door to do whatever I could, for the program. And that last year I was at Ohio State, just because it was really something I wanted to do.
Now, somebody may make an argument to you that taking the next coaching job in a CCLA, in this case, the MCLA, which is a club program, at a time, and you got to remember, I've been an MCLA coach probably 10, 12 years in a couple different positions. It's suicide to follow the club model if you want to be a Division I NCAA coach, because you get labeled in that process. And so you go to Grove City. Now, I understand that that's probably in your backyard, but was that a calculated decision? And did you factor in the idea that this was part of it, or was this just this next step and figuring this is maybe a step for me to be a head coach?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I kind of had an idea. I wanted to get back and really try to give back to the Pittsburgh area. I think that's where the root of me going back to that region was initially. Myself and Pete Poyon, who, like I said, is we're coaching together now at Marquette, kind of had this vision that, hey, we grew up in this area and people tried to help us the best they could. We went out and we had this incredible college experience. Let's get back to kind of our community and really, try to get these guys up to the standard that we see in Baltimore or Philly or New York, with these club programs and the type of coaching they're getting. So that was kind of where it was, coming from, at least initially. And that provided me that opportunity to coach. It still was kind of like, I'm not sure. I know I want to coach. I just wasn't sure what level I wanted to coach at. Had a couple friends that went to Grove City. They had just kind of had their coach move on, and it was just kind of one of those things that they said, hey, you should apply for this. You're going to be in the area. Just why don't you just do it? And I was honestly very hesitant at first. I felt like what we were undertaking within Pittsburgh lacrosse and the youth and high school scene was going to be monumental, and it was going to be a lot of work, but for whatever reason, I said yes, because I'm definitely more of a yes man. I like to, please others and just kind of help any way I can. And, ended up becoming the head coach at Grove City College. I don't even think I was ever on campus, prior to saying yes for that. I just said, hey, this is kind of a cool thing they got going, had a great tradition for the program, and, really felt like I could come in and get to coach college kids that I was, some of which I was the same age at. And just kind of see where it took me.
My point is that the experience you gain of having to be the top guy, and one of the conversations, Ken Lovick is now the MCLA, has been for a long time. Ken is the executive director of the Georgia Tech coach. One of the things I think the MCLA has become from what it was is it's no longer a rival, never was a rival, but the guys in it thought it was a rival to that of the NCAA. Now it's just another great place to play college lacrosse where you got to pay. But it's an alternative for a kid who wants to go to maybe wants to go to another school that doesn't have a Division I program. And I think it's morphed into a really good place because at the highest levels they play very well, and at the bottom they still have, it's not beer league, but it does have that range. And so you at a young age being able to run your own program, it at least going to formulate some ideas that Nick left with you that you had to kind of move forward. So maybe a great experience from a learning standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I think that was what was most attractive to me is I knew kind of going in that, we weren't going to have a lot of resources. I wasn't going to have a full-time staff. I was going to have to kind of, coach everything on my own and run the logistics and do everything. And I was just, as a 22-year-old was like, let's go, let's do this. I was kind of young and naive and I look back at that now and I'm like, man, like there's so many things that I probably didn't do well and I missed, but there's something to be said for just taking action and not overthinking all of the reasons to say no to something, and all of the reasons maybe other people, would tell you, hey, that's not the greatest choice. But I know for me, it absolutely has, I think helped prepare me in some ways to other places that I've gone as an assistant, and understanding, I think, that head coaching role in some ways, and now being the head coach. I mean, even though it's the first time I'm a head coach at the Division I level, being a young head coach in those moments over those few years was really formative for me, and it was a, trial by fire in a lot of ways. I made some mistakes, and, kind of really learned how to play that role. And especially being young, and I still am, but being young in those moments and kind of speaking to guys that I was maybe only a year older than or the same age as was really unique. It's like, how do you, develop kind of a healthy respect, and create a program and culture that people are really excited to come to every day. When guys are probably looking at you, and we're getting off the bus, and I'm sure people didn't even know who the head coach was. I looked younger than I'm sure some of the guys on our team, and I'm sure I still do.
Well, I again, I asked the question. The reason I'm asking the questions is that there's been a long time belief the only way to become a Division I coach is have played Division I lacrosse. That's just been a staple for the last 30 years. And if you follow these interviews, the guys, some of the younger guys that have made it to the Division I level, I mean, even an older guy, Brian Holman at Utah, he went to Utah when it was an MCLA program.
Yep.
Now there were some ideas that they were going to, bounce to D1, but that's a leap of faith, having just won a national championship with Coach Brescia at North Carolina. So there are as many paths to where you are now as there are opportunities within the world of lacrosse. And I think that's the message that we're trying to get across. That said, you've had this great success second year. You're coach of the year in the CCLA in Division II, and Andy Shea must have come on the radar somewhere. You had some experience. You had some experience with asking Nick, how do I help? Is that kind of how it ended up at Yale, going up to Yale?
Yeah. Honestly, through a mutual connection, Andrew Baxter, who is the head coach at Fairfield now, who I worked with at Yale for 5 years, was just kind of ended up being an assistant coach at Yale. And I called him and just kind of said, listen, just finished my second year here. I really need to understand if I know I want to coach in college. I'm not sure which level, because I just hadn't had enough experience. If your volunteer spot opens up, I would just love to interview for it, and, just get connected with Coach Shea. And, he kind of got the ball rolling for me. And, I'll never forget, Coach Shea was, I was obviously back in Pittsburgh at the time. And, I called Coach Shea, and he was like, I would love to sit down and interview you. When can you do it? And, I said, well, what are you doing today or tomorrow? And he was recruiting at the time in Connecticut at Maverick Showtime. And, I just told him, I said, I'll be there. I'll be there tomorrow. And I'll never forget, he was, hysterically laughing on the phone. And he was like, well, how long of a drive is that? And I'm like, it's probably about 8 hours, for me to get out there. And he's like, well, he like just was backing off, trying to tell me, like, we don't have to do this tomorrow. But I wanted to show initiative, and I really, really wanted the job. I felt like that was an awesome step for me and would have been a great opportunity. So, he asked, and he said, well, what does your wife think about this? And I said, she thinks I'm crazy. And he's like, are you crazy? And I'm like, yeah, people probably say I'm crazy. So, but I'm like, I'll be there tomorrow. And got up and, kind of drove, through the night, so to speak, early in the morning. Showed up, met, Coach Shea at a Dunkin' Donuts. Had this nice packet put together, like a lot of people talk about their job interview packet. He looked at it. I think he looked at the cover, looked through a page for like 10 seconds, and like kind of threw it down. I always joke, about with him, as much time as we put into these things, he just wanted to know what type of person I was and have a conversation. And so we sat in the Dunkin' Donuts and talked for a little bit, and, kind of walked around, watched some games together, and just, really got to know each other a little bit. And, a couple of days later found out that, he wanted to hire me and be the volunteer, and kind of the rest is history from there.
It's kind of a Pittsburgh thing. It's kind of a Midwestern thing that you drive 8 hours when the opportunity presents itself, because you can't explain that to somebody from either coast. And I've lived up both coasts, so I completely get that. What do you do? And I guess if you're watching the show, you're a volunteer, a coach. What do you do to pay the rent during that first year?
I think a lot of guys, and my heart goes out to all these guys and in lacrosse right now that are kind of on that volunteer basis at whatever level, because I think it's hard enough during a healthy year to make ends meet. But right now, I mean, guys are having to hustle and hold down another job,
So
to really make it work. So,
what
my
did you
opinion
do?
is what did I do?
What did you do at Yale that first year as a volunteer assistant?
I mean, I did anything and, anything and everything. Anybody that would hire me for a, odd end job to make enough money to pay rent. Obviously kind of running camps and, getting involved with kind of some of the local clubs that were, within the New Haven area to, do lessons or whatever it was. I just had the mentality that like I was going to work 9 to 5 or whatever it was, and be in the office for Coach Shea. And after that, like I needed to be efficient with my time and make money, because at the end of the day, I didn't want the reason, that I would have to get out of coaching to be financial, and I just was willing to do whatever it took. And, there's an aspect of that. And I think I'm sure any coach right now that's a head coach, or successful, coordinator really at the Division I level, especially, like everybody's had to make sacrifices. Everybody's had to, put in that time where they're not making money, they're not salaried. And there's an aspect that I think just makes you really humble, in those moments. And I think it develops a grit, so when you do get to these moments where you're making a salary, and you have full-time benefits and you're doing something you love on a daily basis. I mean, those moments, for me, like when Coach Amplo hired me at Marquette, that was really my first full-time job. That was just like what a moment, what a feeling to feel like, hey, I can show up and I can just work at this school and they're going to pay me to do what I love. You almost feel like it's like criminal in a sense because it's not work, it's play, it really is.
There are probably more coats of paint on Mike Caranavana's fence at Denison. We've had a number of coaches who said, when they got down to their last 20, they needed pizza. That coach would call up and say, "Yeah, I got some whitewash in the garage. Get out and paint it." And it seems like everybody that's come through this program at some point who spent any time at Denison, it painted his fence at least a couple of times. So I get that part. The one curious thing about Yale, you guys in 2018 win a national championship, which has got to be a great experience. But you started as a defensive coordinator and end up for 3 years as an offensive coordinator. So is that just a matter of being able to flip the switch? I always think of offensive coaches being offensive coaches and defensive coaches doing what they do. And so talk just briefly about that process.
Yeah, I mean, I have to point back to my time at Ohio State. I was certainly more on the defensive side of the ball as a D midi, but had come up and understood the offense and had gotten some opportunities on that side of the ball too. And I always just enjoyed learning. Even as a player, whether it was scouting the other team and kind of seeing what offense they ran, understanding a little bit more about what we were doing on the offensive side of the ball as a college guy. And I carried that over to me into coaching. When I got to Grove City, it was like I was, coaching defense, offense, everything. So, had a lot of passion for it. And then even when I went to Yale, being in that volunteer spot, I think that's what's valuable. You don't really get pigeonholed into one side of the ball or the other. So I took on any and every role that, Coach Shea and the staff would give me, whether it was developing, the goalies, faceoff guys, defensemen, offensive players, because I knew at the end of the day, at some point, I wanted to have that flexibility to be able to coach offense or coach defense. And, even when I got to Marquette, coaching defense was something that, was an awesome opportunity for me. And incredibly thankful for Coach Amplo, I think, to put a lot of the trust in me to do that, and I never felt like, even though sometimes I was like, Coach, I need your help on this. I need your opinion. He was like, just go do it, and a lot of times, I mean, that trust, from a coach as an assistant, when you get that, it's like really confirms, that you're doing a good job. Whether it was practice or, preseason, whatever it may be, we were always, as assistants, I think, like running a side of the ball, but also running a team, in scrimmages. And so you just kind of learn, if you choose to, that knowing the other side of the ball, as well as the side of the ball you're coaching, is actually really helpful. And so when the opportunity came at Yale, I remember having the talk with Coach Shea. I said, Coach, I feel like I am a very, defensive-minded person. This is who I am. I'm a high energy guy. And offensively, I feel like that maybe doesn't mesh as well. You got to be calm and resilient. You're going to turn the ball over sometimes. You're going to go on runs where you don't score goals. So you just got to be even keel. And I remember having the conversation with him, like, do you really believe that I can do this? Do you think I could do this at a high level? Because that's what the expectation was going to be. And, he emphatically, I think, believed it even more than me at the time. And, I think certainly helped along with what we were developing at Yale when I got there in 2017. But again, just had so much faith in me, I think initially, and more than I even had in myself. And that, I think, gave me I think the courage, really, I think the permission to be creative and I think try some things that maybe we hadn't done before and, propel us to being, one of the best offenses in the country, was our goal. And we felt like if we did that, with the kind of defensive culture that we had and the defenses that we had the previous years, that we had a chance. We had a chance to beat any team in the country if we did that.
You had 2 years at Yale, then you went back to Marquette, then went back to Yale. But Kevin Connery was on your staff at Yale, if I'm not mistaken.
No, Coach Andrew Baxter was the defensive coordinator at Yale.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was Andrew was he Ohio State guy, right?
Yeah, so he was an assistant at Ohio State. Coach Bax was a Springfield guy undergrad.
Okay.
So one of the many Springfield guys that are coaching college lacrosse now.
And the coach and the catch to that is Nick Myers had played at Springfield. So that
yep.
Happens. So the last kind of, I don't want to keep it too long, but a couple quick questions. You win a championship in 18. Are you more valuable with a national championship? And do you get on the Marquette radar without a championship at Yale in 18?
Yeah, I don't know. I would say probably not. I think being a young coach and still a young coach and still learning, I think you're always trying to build your resume and be consistent, So, I do think winning the national championship certainly helped. I think having those conversations with schools about potential openings, but I kind of knew, even that year, I felt like I certainly had some level of preparedness to take that step, thanks to a lot of the people who were mentors in my life, but, really just didn't feel like the right time. We just had our first child, about 2 years before that. We were expecting it, just, kind of wasn't the right time. And, at the end of the day, I felt like, hey, Dabo Sweeney has this saying, about blooming where you're planted. And, I just felt like I didn't need to be in a rush to be a head coach, and the right opportunity was going to come, and obviously lo and behold, the next year we almost run it back. Still hurts that we lost that game, but, we lost to an incredible Virginia team and, got the opportunity a year later at Marquette. So funny how things work out.
The folks in the South, if you ever lived there for any period of time, they've got sayings for everything. I had not heard that one. I'm not a big sign guy, because if my coach tells me to be tougher and a guy across from me is an All-American who's 3 times bigger and 4 times faster, I'm going to have a long afternoon. So there's you go from a high school. I went from one high school to another at my career, and the second high school I had gone to was full of eventually NFL, NBA, and MLL kind of stars. And all of a sudden, I'm in the state finals, and I'm this brilliant coach. I said, "Well, no, I just get better athletes." So there's some effect to those things. So to kind of move it towards the end of this, you going back to Marquette, obviously working for Joe you'd been in Marquette for a year, so I'm assuming the transition makes it a bit easier.
Yep. Yeah.
And then
go ahead. It was definitely easier, I think, having some of those relationships, understanding, I think, some of the inner workings of Marquette and the type of place it was, and the administration and kind of who was there. It didn't feel like, I had as much homework, to do, or as much of kind of a learning curve that would be a completely new place, and I think that was what was helpful for me is Marquette checked every box that I wanted, in terms of looking for a head coaching job. And I knew that, before they even, called, with interest in talking to me about the job. and then to have some of those, I think, relationships that you have previously and have those people still be there with our athletic director, Bill Scholl, and Danielle Josetti and Mike Broker, who are in our athletic administration, have done an incredible job across the board, getting Marquette athletics to where it is today. Those are the things that I think help you feel really confident in making that decision. Us being there as a family and understanding Milwaukee and where it is and, how far it is away from some of our family. All of those things I think made it a little bit more comfortable of a decision, to make that move, and I think to kind of take that opportunity.
You think Joe was going to Navy when you got there? Do you think that was going to happen, or is that something that just kind of popped up?
I knew, I think with the success that Joe had, that he was always going to be, as like you see in any sport, you have young head coaches that are successful or assistants that are successful, they always become a hot commodity really quickly. And, Joe's an incredible coach. And so I think, I always felt like, that he could have retired at Marquette. But at the end of the day, you knew that there was always going to be great opportunities for him, because he was always going to be successful and I think take a team like Marquette to great heights like he has. And, so those are always things that I think that are really difficult to navigate. You never go to a place intending to leave. But when you get great opportunities, it's always something that, I think guys have to evaluate. And so, it's hard to say. I definitely was, I would say I would always joke with him that he's going to be there forever, and then, some of these great opportunities came up. And I think prior to that, he had said no to some other awesome opportunities too, which tells you a lot about Marquette.
Obviously, Marquette had great success as a first couple year program under his tenure. You kind of have to take over that. I mean, there was a little slide, but not much. And I don't know of any beginning program in the last 10 years that's had more success than Marquette. Does that put more pressure on you to win early?
I think it's honestly something that, pressure is something that, we try to avoid, I think, talking about as coaches and a team. I think it's more of just a privilege of having expectations. And I think people believing in Marquette as a school and as a lacrosse program. So I think something for us that we're always trying to focus on is just looking at, hey, where were we yesterday? Are we getting better today? And we all know in pure coach speak that it's like you're either getting better or you're getting worse. And, so for us, we really just try to focus on the process, and trying to look at every single detail that we have within our program. How can we improve it? How can we do a better job as a staff? How can we do a better job as a team? And, we think at the end of the day, if we're focused on that we're going to end up being pretty good, and you never know when it's going to be, it may not be tomorrow. It may not be, in the next year. It might be in a couple of years, but that's the interesting about, I think thing about the process is you never truly know when the process is actually going to love you back and kind of return the favor for all the work that you've put in. But what a kind of life skill, I think for everybody that's in college athletics to learn, you keep your head down in your work, and eventually you're going to benefit from that work and see the fruits of your labor.
Andrew, how old are you? 20, 32?
32.
Maybe mom and dad or any of the coaches ever told you have an old soul?
Yeah, I've been told that a number of times. But I have, there's, like I said, I have incredible mentors, but my parents are, as much as I think growing up, you always feel differently about your parents once you become a teenager. I just love them to death, and they've done an incredible job, I think, laying out kind of these things for me in my life, not only supporting, kind of my endeavors, but, I think not giving me the easy road. And understanding that, discipline is an aspect that I think is, the number one indicator, for success. If you can be disciplined and develop great habits and do things you necessarily, don't always wake up every day and want to do, but are going to make you successful, you do those. And it's an interesting thing because I think that is something, even now I have two young boys, they're 4 and 2. It's something that I really want to impart on my kids because I've seen how it's benefited me. I've seen how it's benefited other coaches that I've coached under and other players that I've coached, that it's absolutely an advantage. If I think you kind of have that type of mentality, and you need people in your life to foster it because it's really easy to be undisciplined and make decisions that are easy or comfortable.
I asked the question because sometimes coaches talk in talking points, and some coaches just talk in talking points, and other coaches believe they're talking points. And I was talking with Matt Kerwick during the show, and he was kind of talking platitudes. And I said, at what point do you get off the talking points and just be the regular guy? And in talking with you, opportunity comes from circumstance. And,
Sure.
at a young age, you go to Grove City, then you get Andy Shea, you've got Nick Myers. You've had some circumstances that are unusual for a guy 32 years old. And I'm sure you count your blessings for that. But what's interesting in listening to this, and this is just an editorial comment from somebody that doesn't matter, I would send my kid to you because in an hour of talking to you, I believe what you're telling me. And I mean that in the highest compliment. And from a coach to another, I think that's tremendous. And that's a skill that comes with age, and you don't have age. So I think it's remarkable that mom and dad must have did a hell of a job back in Pittsburgh, because it's something that I don't want to sound condescending. It's really fun talking with you, because I think you're just the real genuine article. And I haven't said that in 36 shows.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's honestly, it's something that, I like I said, I mean, even from, not just my family, but even the other guys I've coached under, especially someone like Andy Shea, he is just who he is. He is just 100% who he is all the time. And, I really do think he's had an incredible impact on me on that, just like some of my other mentors that, there's an aspect, I think, when you become a head coach, or you're trying to become a head coach, or, even as you're just trying to climb the ladder, Greg, like we were talking about, you feel like you kind of have to check certain boxes and you have to be a certain person. And while some of those things may be true, you're still you and you're still yourself. And I think it's really easy to get lost in all of this and lose who you are, and just kind of feel like, you're looking in the mirror and you're saying buzzwords, and, like 5-10 years go by and it's like, who am I? When I got into this and I started coaching, that was one of the biggest things that I always asked my inner circle of friends, family, other coaches who have mentored me. Never, take it easy on me in terms of like telling me the truth. If you feel like I'm changing who I am as a person because of this job or this role, humble me, and that's always something. It's had to happen a couple of times. And it's like, those are blind spots in our life. And that's something that we really try to talk about within our program. We talk about the level of buy-in and alignment. And I use this example of arrows. Like, we all want to be facing the same direction, pulling the same direction, whatever you want to say. All those arrows can look different. They just got to be pointing in the same direction, and so we really want to have that authenticity. Like, this is who you are. This is your experience. Right. If we're not being authentic, I just think we're missing out on this entire experience.
I have a sweatshirt that I've worn for years, and it says on the front, if lacrosse is your life, and on the back, you better get a new life. And the only two rules we have is that if you lie to me, you're done with me forever. And if you want to miss a practice because, your girlfriend's in town, you remember what it was like being 19, your girlfriend, you haven't seen her in 6 months. Yep. If my team premise or my culture and all the rest of it doesn't work because one kid misses one practice, kids that age don't have the power over what they need to do. And I say all the time to my players, which drives coaches nuts, I tell my players to be selfish. And look at you like, what are you talking about? I said, if our premise is beat your man, score a goal, which is what they use at Duke.
Yeah,
if you beat your man every time, score a goal, you'll be an All-American. Now, being selfish is being the best player you can be. I said, going into a double team and losing the ball isn't being selfish. That's just being stupid. So
right.
be the best player. The whole point is you're trying to change the semantics and give them back some power. So I appreciate the process. Last question. Talk. You have a lot of Michigan guys on your roster. You do a pretty good job of recruiting here. Where do we sit as a state in your mind in terms of recruiting, and are we improving as a state?
Yeah, no, I absolutely think so. I think there is, I think the depth of talent is definitely improving. I can look back, and as we kind of talked about before, you obviously understand Brother Rice is a talented school, that always is bringing in, I think top talent, and, has put a ton of guys in the Division I ranks. One of my favorite players of all time, Jason Alessi at Yale, a two-sport guy. I always knew Brother Rice was great and had a great program, but you have somebody like Jason Alessi, and you get to coach him, you really realize why the program is so special. But I do think the depth of talent throughout the state has grown, and it's obvious that people who are from Michigan or the area, have gone back and I think given back, to their local schools, and if they've moved to a different area, they've grown the programs, in that area. So I think you see it there, on the local level, on the state level, even in the club scene, there's club programs, from Michigan that I think are doing a great job. You see like a club program like Juice Cherries, they've produced a ton of talent lately, and they're playing up there with the best club programs in the country, and they're winning some of those games, right? It's not even just, they're competitive. It's like they're winning those games now. And, so I think that's a great sign of the local growth. I think it's something for us, Michigan has done an incredible job in state, and I think it's something for us that we want to make sure we're competing for those guys too, if we can. So I'm excited about where the lacrosse growth is in the Midwest, not just in Michigan, but even within the state of Wisconsin. Obviously Chicago and Illinois have just grown exponentially. I think you're seeing that growth in Minnesota and have seen it for a while. So it's exciting to see that. And we got to keep it going. And I know we take a big ownership, I think, on our staff and within our program, within our general locale to grow the sport around here, because I do think it's beneficial for us for one, but we all know who've played it and coached it, it's just such a special game, and we really want to share it with others. And, I think provide as little entry fee, and kind of barrier to entry, I guess, so to speak, as possible, for kids to get a stick in their hands in whatever way we can do. So there's so many people, I think, doing that in the Midwest right now. And we're going to be part of it and continue to be part of it. But I'm excited for where it's going, and I think that's been, you look at the last decade or so at the NCAA level, people are recruiting on a national scale now. It doesn't matter where you are. Some of the best players in the country every year are coming from, non-traditional lacrosse areas. So that's just an exciting thing to see. And it's something for me, especially as a guy from Pittsburgh, what an awesome opportunity that now these kids have, that maybe we didn't have. And I think that's the coolest thing about giving back, and providing that opportunity for people, because we know that this game can change lives, and have an incredible impact on young men and women. So the more we grow it, the better we'll be, the bigger our sport will be. And we're all kind of in it together. So people like yourself doing this that's definitely part of the solution and part of getting this sport to the next level.
Well, listen, I wish you the best of luck. I certainly wish your family happy holidays and, continued success and future success with Marquette. And I appreciate you spending some time with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Appreciate you having me on. And obviously anytime we can talk lacrosse, I would gladly hop back on here, and hopefully I'll see you on the road at some point and see you at a Marquette lacrosse game here in the future.
Thanks, Andrew.